Hello, it's Sonia here with The Pretty Stitch. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, I'm so happy to have you here. So today is Tuesday, and that means it's Tunisian Tuesday. So today we are going to be learning a fun Tunisian technique called Entrelac, and you can use a variety of colors for this. So I'm using a bunch of purple colors, and you can use this technique to make blankets or scarves, or I've seen it in, sweaters, so all kinds of things. So you can definitely get creative with this. So what you're going to want to do, now you can use different chain combinations, but for this demonstration, I'm going to be chaining a multiple of 11, and then I will add 1. So I think I'm going to chain 45 today because 44 times 4, or 11 times 40, yeah, I can do math. 11 times 4 is 44, and then you add 1 and it's 45. So I am going to do that. Okay, so I have my 45 chains here, and I'm going to be using some different colors for this. And the nice thing with this is you do not need to use a Tunisian hook. I'm just using my H hook or 5mm hook. You could even use a hook if you have a hook with a wider handle, like an ergonomic handle. You can definitely use those hooks for this swatch that we're doing here. So what we're going to do for row 1 is we're going to work in the back bump of the chain. In the second bump from our hook, we're going to pull up a loop like we do normally for Tunisian crochet, and I'm going to keep pulling up loops until I have 7 loops on my hook. So I have 7 loops on my hook, and now we're going to work these off. So normally what you do is you yarn over, you pull through 1 loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2 for the rest of the row. But for this, we're going to yarn over, pull through 2 right from the start. Yep, and I just pull my loops off my hook. Well, you don't want to do that. Okay. So I'm yarning over, pulling through 2 for my row 1 here. And there we go. So now we are going to work row 2, and we're going to be creating a series of blocks across, so you'll understand as we get going here. So for row 2, we're working Tunisian simple stitch. So in that first vertical bar, we're inserting our hook and pulling up a loop, and we're going to do that all the way across. Okay, so now I have 6 loops on my hook, and we want to have 7. So you want to remember that we want to keep to the number 7. So in the next chain, and you want to make sure you don't work in the same chain, so if you just pull it, you can see that's where that stitch is. So the next chain, you're going to work in that back bump and pull up a loop. So now we have our 7 loops on our hook. So we're going to yarn over, pull through 2 to complete row 2, because Tunisians always worked in 2 parts. You have your forward pass where you're putting stitches on, and your return pass where you're taking stitches off. And I do have a complete playlist of Tunisian crochet techniques and patterns that I can link in the description box if you want to see more, or if you just want to get started with the basics here. Alright, so now we're ready for row 3. We're going to do the same thing as row 2. We're going to pull up our loops until we have 6, and then we're going to, and I think my yarn's splitting. Okay, let's not do that, until we have 6 loops on our hook. So I have my 6 loops. Now I'm going to go into my chain, my very next chain, and now I'm going to pull through those loops. So pulling through 2 right from the start. And we're going to do that 2 more times. We're just repeating row 2 until we have worked 5 rows. If you're having trouble counting your rows, if you turn it on its side, you can easily see, looks like the ends of regular crochet stitches. So 1, 2, and 3. So we want to work 5 rows. Okay, so we have worked 5 rows and now you can see we have our first little block here. So you can also count easily just looking at the front. So looking at first row of bird vertical bars, second, third, fourth, and fifth. So now we actually need to do a bind off row, and we are going to bind off in Tunisian simple stitch, and you just want to be mindful when you're binding off that you don't bind off tightly. You want to keep your stitches nice and relaxed. Not super loosey-goosey, but just a nice relaxed tension. So we're going in that first vertical bar and we're just binding those off. So it's basically working a slip stitch across. Okay, so we have bound off across, so now we need to go into the next chain and we're just working a slip stitch in that back bump in that next chain. And now we have completed our first block here. So it kind of looks like, you know, or it looks diamond shaped. So now we are going to work the next set, the next block. So we're going to have a series of blocks across our chain here. So we want to pull up until we have 7 loops on our hook. So it's just working in that back bump. So there is my 7 loops and we're working these off. So this will be row 1 for the second block. Okay, and now we're going to repeat row 2 like we did over here. So rows 2 through 5 we're repeating. And then going in that chain, and then yarn over, pull through 2. And keep going here. So now we have 5 rows again for our second block. So we're going to do the same thing with the bind off. So again, just watch your tension, not too tight. Just working those bind off stitches, basically a slip stitch. And then going into that next chain. So what you're going to do is you're going to repeat row block 2 until we get to the end, until we get to our last blocks. I'm going to meet you back when I get to the last block here because it's just going to be slightly different. Okay, so I am currently working on my last block. So I'm working the last block like we had done the other blocks, but I just wanted to show you that's something that's going to be slightly different. So here is my last chain. I am on my row 5 of my last block. So I am going to pull up my loops like we've been doing. And I'm going to work in that chain here. I think I chained an extra, didn't count right, but that's okay. You can always undo it. It's always better to have extra chains than not enough. All right, so now I have my 7 loops. So what we're going to do, because this is the end of our row here of blocks, we are going to work a regular Tunisian bind off, or not bind off, regular Tunisian return pass, where we're going to yarn over, pull through 1 loop, then yarn over and pull through 2 for the rest of the row. And now we need to bind off our stitches. And our first row of blocks will be complete. And again, just make sure your tension is very relaxed. So now I'm at my last stitch here, so I'm going to work, it looks like a chain. I'm going to work in the center of that chain to bind that guy off. And then you can cut your yarn, but I'm not going to cut this yarn because I want to reuse it for another project. But there is our first set of blocks. Okay, so now we are ready for our second set of blocks. So what we're going to do is we are going to attach our yarn. I'm using a different color. So if we're looking at the row, they look like diamonds here. We are going to attach it right here. So I have my other color, it's like a lavender. And we're going to chain 6. And now in the back bump of the chain, we're pulling up loops like we did before, just like normal. We'll have 6 loops on our hook. So there's 6 loops, and then right back in that stitch to anchor it, we're going to pull up our loops. So now we have our 7 loops on our hook, and we're going to yarn over, pull through 2 for the rest of the row. And we're going to continue for row 2, just like we did in our first set of blocks, pulling up our loops in Tunisian simple stitch here. So then we're going to have 6 loops on our hook. So there we go, and now we're going to go into that next stitch here, and we're going to pull up a loop till we have 7, and then we'll work those off. And we're going to keep going for 5 rows. So we have 4 rows here, we have 1 more to go. Okay, so there is our 5 rows. Okay, so now we have to bind off like we did on these other blocks over here. So we're just going to insert our hook in that first vertical bar and work that bind off stitch, that slip stitch. So you just, again, watch your tension. And the reason why we're watching our tension is because we will need to work in these stitches, and if they're too tight, that's going to be a big hassle. All right, so we have bound off, so now we're going to insert our hook into that next stitch there, working a slip stitch. And now we're ready for our next set of blocks. So here is our first loop, and we're going to pull up loops until we have 7 on our hook. And you just want to be careful that these guys aren't twisted. They like to, so just make sure they're, you know, facing up the right way. So we have 6 loops, so we now need to go into the next loop because we want to have, remember it's 5 and 7. So we have 7 loops on our hook, and we're going to yarn over, pull through 2 like we've been doing to create the next block in this second row of blocks. And I'm going to repeat row, or I'm going to repeat the row I just did. We're going to pull up loops working in those vertical bars. So I have 6 loops. Now I'm going to go into that next block and then I have 7 and work them off. So it's a pretty quick technique here so far. Oops, as long as you keep your loops on your hook, then it's a quick technique. So we're going to keep going till we have 5 rows done. Okay, so now we're starting to kind of see it. It's looking really nice. So now we have to bind off this row here. So just like we've been doing. So we've worked those bind off stitches, so now you're going to work a slip stitch in that very next stitch. And we're just going to repeat what we did on the second block over here across until we get to the end here. So I'm going to go do that and I will meet you back. Okay, so we are almost done our second row of blocks here. So we are at our last block. So I'm just working across tops of those stitches, pulling up my loops. Alright, so we are at the end of our row here. We have 6 loops, so right here at the very end, it kind of looks like a chain. You want to insert your hook. I have that extra yarn because I don't want to cut it. Let me try to get it out of the way here. So, yeah, that's working very well. Alright. So going right there on that end, pulling up a loop. So we just want to make sure we have our 7 loops, and we're going to yarn over and pull through 1, and then yarn over, pull through 2 for the rest of this row because we are on the end here. It just gives a nice, cleaner edge. That's all. And we're going to keep going until we have our 5 rows, and we will do our bind off row. So working in that stitch that looks like a chain through both of those loops, pulling through 1, pulling through 2 for the rest of the row. Okay, I'm almost done with my bind off row here of my last block for my second row of blocks. And so here we go. So what you're going to notice with your row 2 of blocks, you're going to have 1 extra block. So I have 4 for my first row here. And for row 2 of my second set of blocks, I have 5. So you're going to have 1 extra. Okay, so now we're ready for our next set of blocks, our row 3 of blocks. So now we need to attach our yarn. So what we need to do is we're going to look on the ends here. So you can see the ends 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then that next stitch, we're going to attach our yarn. And we're going to pull up loops like we normally do. We're not working a chain for this row here. So we want to keep pulling up our loops until we have 7. There's our magic number of 7, and then yarn over, pull through 2. So this row of blocks we're going to have 4 like we did for row 1. And we're just going to continue like normal, pulling up our loops, working Tunisian simple stitch. So I have 5, 6, and then going into that next block there. Now this is a curler because we're working simple. I think if you wanted to make a blanket with this, I would probably maybe work my edge. So like this row here, maybe the first 2 work purl stitches because purl stitches help to keep things flatter, and then work everything else simple as like a border. It's just an idea there. So we've got one more row, and then we'll work our bind off. Okay, so I've worked my bind off of my first block, so we need to get ready to begin the next. So in our very next stitch, work that slip stitch, and then you're going to continue pulling up loops like we've been doing, and then working your bind off stitches. You're going to do that all the way across. So you're going to see that you will only have 4. You can kind of see where they're going to be tucked in here. So here's going to be the second block, the third block, the fourth block. So I'm going to work those blocks and I will meet you back. Okay, so I am at my bind off row here of my last block. And then we are just going to attach right at that corner stitch right there to complete the bind off there. So there you go. So what you'll want to do is repeat your block rows 2 and 3 for the pattern. So for row 4, where I'm going to attach the yarn, so don't overthink it. So here was our first block row, and we attached the yarn on the end here. And then we worked the second one. Now we've worked the third. So we're going to attach at this third block right here our yarn, and then we're going to chain 6 and then work the block accordingly. So it's going to give you kind of a funky edge there, which is going to be really fun. I actually like this. It kind of is like a built-in edging. There are ways of doing Entrelac where you could have it a complete like rectangular square, but I like the fun edging. I think it adds you know, something a little different. So I'm going to work a few more rows here so you can see the pattern, and I will meet you back. Okay, so I ended up working 4 rows here, and I think it looks really pretty, really nice. So you can see it's definitely curling big time, but you can try to smooth that out so you can see the edges here, how it creates that interesting edging. But yeah, if you wanted to make this as a blanket, I would suggest maybe like the first 2 blocks rows be purl stitches, and then on the edges too here, maybe, you know, the first 2 on the ends also be purl, and then that would help with that because purl stitches tend to lay more flat with Tunisian crochet. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.